You are listening to the Centerpoint Self-Care Podcast. We're here to show you how to synchronize your environment, mind, body, and breathing to return to your center. I'm Kevin Allen Kerber, here speaking with creator of the Centerpoint Self-Care Method, Barclay Powers. Barclay is an award-winning filmmaker and world-class internal martial arts scholar. Today, we are exploring brain satisfaction, how a true sense of fulfilling satisfaction is achievable and real.
We'd like you to talk about the concept of brain satisfaction and how that relates to meditation and mindfulness.
Meditation theory is one in which, unless you get to very deep levels of meditation, that it's impossible to actually achieve satisfaction in the course of normal life, which is actually based on frustration or suffering and the inability to integrate deeper states of consciousness with waking awareness. So the idea of meditation is that the only way you can achieve genuine, deep, permanent satisfaction is to get to the deepest levels of yourself, and that a normal person is never satisfied in the course of life or in the course of their personal narrative, because the unconscious and the conscious mind are separate, and the nature of existence or the perception of reality is incomplete without getting to these deeper and deeper levels of the psyche, which are linked with who we really are as human beings.
When people think of meditation, is that just calming? Is there some type of healing going on there?
Normal meditation, particularly mindfulness, which is extremely popular globally at this point, it's basically intended to calm the mind, to reduce negative emotions, and to enable you to cope more easily with the ups and downs of daily life. And that's fine. But that's also very different than achieving genuine inner illumination, based on opening the meridian system in the body, based on using the reproductive system to supercharge dormant areas of the brain and raise your overall vibration and brain cell energy production capacity. And so there's a theory in mindfulness, which is very popular now, which is not necessarily accurate, which is that a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. Because if your mind is not focused on the present, you will have negative types of thoughts about the past or the future, and you'll be engaged in rumination, as opposed to focusing on the present, which is considered to be a higher level of purpose and satisfaction, relatively free from painful emotions and thoughts about the past or fears about the future. The problem with this focus on constraining your consciousness is that it doesn't go deep enough, and then it really only applies to people that have what we could call a negative internal dialogue, in which their basic tendency, because they have anxiety or depression or a lack of overall satisfaction, they have negative thoughts when they're not focused on the present or on having positive thoughts. But actually, if you look at creativity and the concept of the big idea, coming up with a breakthrough solution to a problem, coming up with a new creative framework or a new discovery, those are often associated with a wandering mind. And so one of the problems with mindfulness is that it seeks to constrain the consciousness as if you're leashing a dog and teaching it to heel, as opposed to releasing the consciousness so that it can become one with infinity and spontaneously gather peak experiences or unique creative information or breakthrough type thinking. And so there's a balance between these approaches, and it's definitely not one size fits all. And then people with severe anxiety, depression, trauma, often being told to be mindful of the present or being told to sit quietly with your eyes closed can trigger unpleasant emotions, and is one of the reasons why so many people try to meditate, assume that it means that you're comfortably and happily thinking about nothing. And then when they fail to do that, they say, I've tried meditation and it didn't work for me. As opposed to understanding that the ancient framework of meditation practice is one where the mind is described by two animals. So the first is the monkey, which is jumping around erratically, can never sit still, is always uncomfortable, is always looking for something different, and cannot rest quietly. So one of the primary goals of meditation is often described as calming the monkey mind so that you're actually comfortable and satisfied in that period of time, with the concept usually being that quiet breathing with the whole body results in a quiet mind eventually. The other animal that's associated with ancient meditation traditions is the elephant, which represents torpor, sluggishness, or a deep state of trance where you're relatively unconscious. And so many meditators, when they get really good, become comfortable going into these states of oblivion, which are definitely good for the brain, but at the same time may include a loss of some levels of awareness and consciousness, because what we're really trying to do is heighten the awareness and the consciousness by training the mind, not just blot it out like a bear hibernating or a squirrel hibernating all winter where they're in an unconscious trance state. So the ancient theory is that there are three primary states, this is from India, that there are three primary states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and deep dreamless sleep. And the idea is that when you're in deep dreamless sleep, you're actually connected to a universal field of consciousness, but you can't remember it and you're not aware of it. And then there is a fourth state, which is called Turiya, which represents a state that is beyond those three primary states of consciousness, in which you still have your awareness while participating in waking, dreaming, and deep dreamless sleep. And so meditation theory is that you gain the ability to hold one object in the mind And as you gain the ability to do that, the subject-object distinguishment collapses eventually, and then there is no longer a differentiation between the object of meditation and your own perception of it. And so that is actually very good for the brain, because it's enabling you to essentially deconstruct your normal identity and resonate with the whole field for periods of time. And that's also why some of the Himalayan traditions include dream yoga or lucid dreaming in their practices, because the idea is that if you can gain the ability to be aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming, that's actually a higher state of consciousness than normal consciousness, because normal consciousness is also a kind of a dream, but we're not aware that we're dreaming while we're participating within daily life. And so everything we're talking about is deepening the abilities of the mind to perceive reality and to deconstruct our personal narrative, and then gradually reduce the artificial reality distortion field which we've been conditioned into, which prevents us from becoming aware of our original consciousness, which is who we were before we learned our name, before we learned language, before we created an identity, and before we were conditioned by our culture, our civilization, and our religions. And so the ancient meditation theory is that we started out in a complete, whole, illuminated state. And the purpose of all these different mind-body training methods is to return to that state, which is who we really are. And this is rarely discussed by Western meditation teachers, who are simply based on teaching us to calm our minds so that we can adapt more successfully to mediocrity and an artificial identity, which will never really result in true happiness, because it's not based on inner illumination and returning to who we really are, independent of the artificial narrative of our culture and our society.
How does Centerpoint create a pathway to achieving the sense of brain satisfaction?
One of the other problems of most modern meditation systems is that they leave out the meridian system of the body, which both Indian and Chinese medical systems are based on. And so Centerpoint is actually the first mind-body system that includes the idea of increasing the flow of bioelectrical energy through the meridian system, which supercharges the brain gradually and safely and enables the individual to achieve a much higher level of brain satisfaction and satisfaction as a whole. Because what you see in modern Western culture is that everybody is actually regulating the brain all day long, using sugar, using junk food, using coffee, using cigarettes, using toxic narcotics, texting constantly, focused on screens constantly distracting themselves in a way that's reducing their overall happiness, their overall participation in reality, life, family. And at the end of the day, the goal of Centerpoint training is to enable you to balance the solar and lunar currents of energy in the body, which are called yin and yang in the East Asian framework. And the more you can achieve balance in the flow of the bioelectrical energy system of the body through the meridians, the more you can achieve satisfaction in all aspects of your life, and the more you can gain a personal sense of true spiritual satisfaction, which goes far beyond buying and selling and commercial consumerism, which is what everyone's controlled by in modern Western society.
So how do you train your body, your brain, to this place where feeling satisfied and complete is an expected biochemical occurrence?
So the brain works in terms of both chemical and electrical signals and pathways. So Centerpoint is a complete system. So of course we're focused on balancing dopamine, which is pleasure, and serotonin, which is happiness, by using supplementation as well as breathing exercises, which rewire the nervous system and integrate the conscious and the unconscious levels of the psyche. But the ancient model that Centerpoint is based on is one in which, by regulating movement and exercise, diet, nutrition, supplementation for dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, GABA, regulating the gut brain and focusing on synchronizing the neurons and the firing of the neurons in the brain, the heart, and the gut brain in the lower abdomen, the overall body, mind, and spirit can reach a much higher level of peak performance, and automatically there should be a significant reduction in self-destructive behavior and mental patterns of thought, which is what most people are consumed by and which prevents people from reaching their full potential, whether in athletics, whether in art, whether in science, whether in meditation.
Centerpoint has coordinated, synchronized movements that unlock your inner system for the sufficient performance. Can you explain how to create a harmonizing movement into this place, rather than the typical and damaging extreme workout trend of pushing your system into fitness?
One of the differences between Centerpoint and normal Western boot camp type training programs, whether they apply to the body or to meditation, is that the overall method should be relatively effortless, natural, timeless, and blissful. So that we don't want to force anything, because the idea is the more you force something, the more chance there is of negative side effects, which obviously occur when people lift too much weight, when people run too far without recovering and resting incomplete and strain tendons in the knees, or when people go too long without enough sleep, so that the body doesn't have the ability to refresh itself, and the end result of struggling and straining and pushing is one where there may be short-term gains, but there isn't an overall balanced approach that's natural and that is working with your environment and that is working with nature. So one very important aspect of Centerpoint, which is different than other systems, is the more we can encourage people to practice outside in a green, leafy environment on the earth, the better. There's a much higher level of oxygen, and automatically it enables the body to resonate with the sky and the earth, which is this ancient training model that goes back thousands of years in all of these countries before modern industrialized civilization and pollution. And so there's a well understood concept at this point of how often people achieve creative breakthroughs and peace of mind when they're in a natural place, walking through a forest, practicing in a park. But there's a difference between doing that and then taking it a step further, which is to really activate the dormant bioelectrical energy of the body that's stored in the lower torso, and then to take that up through the meridian system to the brain, so that the body is actually resonating at a much higher level of cellular energy production, and the overall level of craving and the overall level of missing something and lacking satisfaction, which is so perfectly captured by the advertising industry, where you're constantly being told, if you buy this new thing, you'll finally reach this new level of happiness, but that never happens. And so that's why Centerpoint is based on 4 basic concepts. 1, which is simplicity. 2, which is equilibrium. 3, which is synchronization or unification. And 4, which is quiescence, where the idea is that the more you can get quiet by slowly breathing with the whole body, by connecting with the earth and with the sky, and by resonating in harmony with the universe, the more you can transcend the problems which are keeping you from genuine meaning, genuine purpose, and life satisfaction. And by doing that on a regular basis, you're actually greatly improving your health, because the health of your body is directly connected with the level of peace of mind that you're experiencing, and it's connected with your level of creative satisfaction. So the idea is that when you can gain this greater level of mind, body, spirit synchronization, you can have a much more fulfilling existence, and then you can really excel at whatever it is you're trying to get good at, whether it's athletics, whether it's intuition, whether it's creativity, because all of these aspects of yourself are important, and it's by harmonizing the energy flow within your body and balancing the positive and negative energy meridians of the body that you end up drawing closer and closer to your true self, your true nature, and your inner purpose. Whereas most aspects of Western life actually pull you further and further away from this deep inner level of yourself in which you are whole, happy, and satisfied. And that's actually always there, whether you're aware of it or not, but you have to practice and really slow the breathing and calm the mind to be able to see for yourself, because you can only judge your own level of perception. And the more you practice a system that's complete, like Centerpoint, the more you're able to get to these deeper levels and see what your potential really is, as opposed to the artificial reality distortion field that's imposed upon everybody by normal Western life and culture.
In achieving that active state of satisfaction, balance, harmony, perhaps even bliss, can you talk about learning the movement so well that they take no outward thought or conscious effort, allowing one to move into that space with ease?
When you get good at your practice, which means you can do 30 minutes to an hour of Centerpoint 5 or 6 days a week. And remember, Western medicine recommends at least 150 minutes of movement per week. That when you can do this practice over and over and over, and it becomes comfortable, it becomes effortless, and you gain the ability to really feel the bioelectrical energy of the body and to feel greatly enhanced well-being each time you practice, that lasts for longer and longer periods of time throughout the day. That you reach a point where you can be satisfied with less and less, instead of always wanting more and more. And there is extensive psychological research at this point that suggests the most effective way of achieving happiness is not to want to be a wealthy celebrity, but to be satisfied with less and less, and to find your satisfaction from within in the course of daily life, and to find personal reward by your own depth, purpose, and meaning, which means connecting the unconscious with the unconscious mind. And I would suggest that this goes even a step further, that we're actually in a multiverse, and that there are many advanced, parallel, probable, and alternate versions of ourselves that we are interconnected with in this multiverse. And that as you use a system like Centerpoint, you are tapping into these higher levels of yourself that are outside of three-dimensional space and time. And by exchanging information with those other dimensions of ourselves, we can actually resonate at a much higher level of being. And that this is actually where creative breakthrough, ideas, discoveries, and leaps in terms of human culture and consciousness really come from, but that most people aren't aware of it, and intuition isn't developed. But that's what we're really talking about here in terms of creating a breakthrough in plane that allows us to connect with these higher dimensions of consciousness, which are also part of who we really are.
For more talks like this, along with free classes on the Centerpoint method and more, visit us at centerpoint.app.